Have you heard anything back from Iran? Is this strike in Yemen a signal to Iran?
This strike in Yemen is about their ability, the ability of the Houthis to strike global shipping and attack the U.S. Navy, and their willingness to do it. 174 times against the U.S. Navy, 145 sometimes against global shipping. That's what the strike is about. What we can't ignore, and the reason why the president mentioned Iran, is because the Iranians have supported the Houthis. They've provided them intelligence, they've provided them guidance, they've provided them weaponry. I mean, there's no way the Houthis, the Houthis would have the ability to do this kind of thing unless they had support from Iran. And so this was a message to Iran. Don't keep supporting them, because then you will also be responsible for what they are doing in attacking Navy ships, in attacking global shipping.
They also get support from Russia, potentially, which you leverage sanctions in regard to. But I want to ask you about tariffs, because you were just in Canada this past week. China is Canada's second biggest export market, Mexico's third. In this ongoing trade back and forth the U.S. is having, isn't there a risk that China will ultimately be the winner? If it's too costly to deal with the United States, won't they benefit?
Well, actually, China and Canada are involved in a mini trade war right now. In fact, the Chinese have imposed a bunch of tariffs, reciprocal or retaliatory tariffs on Canada after Canada imposed tariffs on them. So here's the way everyone needs to understand this, okay? The president rightfully believes that the balance of global trade is completely off kilter. For 30 or 40 years, we have allowed countries to treat us unfairly in global trade, much of it during the Cold War, because we wanted them to be rich and prosperous because they were our allies in the Cold War. But now that has to change. You look at the European Union. The European Union's economy is about the same size as ours. It's not a low-wage economy. It's very comparable to ours in terms of its composition and so forth. Why do they have a trade surplus with us? So what the president is saying is two things. Number one, there are critical industries like aluminum, like steel, like semiconductors, like automobile manufacturing that he rightfully believes, President Trump rightfully believes, the U.S. needs to have a domestic capability. And the way you protect those industries and build that capability is by ensuring that there's economic incentives to produce in the United States. The second is global, and that is we are going to put tariffs on countries reciprocal to what they impose on us. And so this is a global. It's not against Canada. It's not against Mexico. It's not against the EU. It's everybody. And then from that new baseline of fairness and reciprocity, we will engage potentially in bilateral negotiations with countries around the world on new trade arrangements that make sense for both sides. Fairness. But right now it's not fair. We're going to reset the baseline, and then we can enter into these bilateral agreements potentially with countries so that our trade is fair. What's not going to continue is, of course, these countries.
So this is all just about leverage to get bilateral, not North American free trade deals renegotiation.
No, it's not leverage. It's fairness. It's resetting baseline fairness, and then from there we can work on deals and so forth, because they'll have products we don't make, we have products they don't make. That's where trade works the best. It has to be free, but it has to be fair. And right now it's only free on one side, and it's not fair for the other side.
Well, it's
an unsustainable position.
The ad hoc nature of these policy announcements and pullbacks are causing concern in the marketplace, as we saw this past week. So I heard you describe what seemed like a strategy to get to negotiations on a bilateral front. You also seem to you say this was national security minded, but then we also see comments by the president of like 200% tariffs on champagne. That's not a critical industry for the United States. That seems more emotional.
No, that's called retaliation. That's what happens in these trade exchanges. They're going to increase tariffs on. They already have high tariffs. They're going to add more to their tariffs. Fine. Then we'll have to find something to. I mean, you tell me. I mean, Canada's going after whiskey and orange juice and
in retaliation.
Yeah, exactly. So that sounds pretty petty to me as well. So what's the difference? The point is, I get it. I understand why these countries don't like it, because the status quo of trade is good for them. It benefits them. They like the status quo. We don't like the status quo. We are going to set a new status quo, and then we can negotiate something, if they want to, that is fair for both sides. But what we have now cannot continue. We have just deindustrialized this country. Okay, deindustrialized the United States of America. There are things we can no longer make, and we have to be able to make in order to be safe as a country and in order to have jobs. That's why we had a Rust Belt. That's why we've suffered all these important jobs that once sustained entire communities, wiped out by trade that basically sent these factories, these jobs, this industrial capability to other places. That cannot and will not continue. President Trump, this is no mystery. He's been talking about this since the 1980s, actually,
Yeah.
even before he was a political figure. This is going to happen, and it's going to happen now.
I want to ask you about Russia. You said Envoy Steve